Today, we're going to discuss my favorite macromolecule, carbohydrates. Now, by the end of this pre-lecture, I hope that you'll come away with 1, an understanding of the 3 functions of carbohydrates, 2, a knowledge of the chemical formula of carbohydrates, 3, the main functional groups that we find in all carbohydrates, and 4th, that you can identify a simple sugar or a monosaccharide. Okay, so let's start with the 3 functions of carbohydrates. 1, they're used for energy. Fortunately, they're also very tasty. So the carbohydrates that are used for energy include molecules like glucose and starch. The second function of carbohydrates is for structure. And the major macromolecules carbohydrates used for structure include cellulose, which is a component of the cell wall in plants, and chitin, which is found in the exoskeleton of organisms like insects and crabs. Not so tasty. And the third major function of carbohydrates is identification. So on the surface of cells, I'm drawing a cell here, we find molecules called glycoproteins. And these are a combination of proteins and carbohydrates. And they're useful for cells to be able to determine what's me and what's not me. And if that cell is not me, to be able to get rid of it. Okay, so very useful for identification. So you may be scratching your head or wondering, wow, that's a lot of functions for one simple macromolecule. How do they do it? Incredible carbohydrates. Well, it's because carbohydrates can be put together in many different ways. And because they can be put together in a diversity of ways, they can have many different functions. Okay. So now let's look at the chemical formula of a carbohydrate. And the key to understanding the chemical formula is really in the words. We have carbo, which means there's carbon in carbohydrates, and hydrate, which means water. Now, that's not to say that in carbohydrates, water is linked to carbon. That's not it. But carbon is always found in a ratio of 1:1 with H2O. Sorry, and I'm drawing an N there. That's a messy N. Okay, where N can be anything, can be a number between 3 up to over 1,000. Okay, but again, don't think that in carbohydrates we find water linked to carbon. Rather, the important functional groups that we find in carbohydrates include number 1, hydroxyl groups. Okay. Remember, that's that OH. The second important functional group we find in carbohydrates are carbonyls. So let's look in more detail at the structure and chemical formula of carbohydrates, and specifically we're going to start by talking about monosaccharides, which are the building block of all carbohydrates. And literally this means one sugar. Okay? Let's start with a carbohydrate that has 3 carbons, and that would be called a triose. Okay? It would have a carbonyl group, and it would have lots of hydroxyl groups, okay, as well as carbon-hydrogen bonds. Okay, again, there's our carbonyl, and we have 2 hydroxyl groups. Okay, let's be sure I have the molecule drawn correctly with the correct chemical formula. We have 3 carbons. We should have 6 hydrogens then. 3 times 2 is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Phew, got that right. And we should have 3 oxygens. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Okay, how about a 6-carbon carbohydrate? That would be called a hexose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's our carbonyl group. And can lots of hydroxyl groups. Fill in our carbons with hydrogens. Okay, and again, this is referred to as a hexose. And specifically, what I've drawn here is glucose. Okay, now carbohydrates differ by the position of the carbonyl and also the orientation of the hydroxyl group. Let me show you. So we can take this hydroxyl group right here and flip it to the other side, and we end up with a different molecule called galactose, completely different carbohydrate. Carbonyl is in the same place. Everything else is in the same place, but we've simply moved that hydroxyl group to the other side. Okay, moved it over here, and now we have galactose. Totally different tasting carbohydrate, different structure, slightly different function. Okay, we can also alter the position of the carbonyl. So if we move the carbonyl down 1 carbon, but leave everything else the same as we did in glucose, I have 6 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now we've put the carbonyl at what's called the second carbon. I should have mentioned that the carbons are numbered in carbohydrates, starting with the carbon that's closest to the carbonyl group. So this would be carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Here we've put the carbonyl group on the second carbon, and in this position, instead of being an aldehyde, it's now a ketone or a ketose sugar. Okay? And instead of being galactose, it's a carbohydrate called fructose. So again, to summarize, carbohydrates can differ in the number of carbons, they differ in the position of the carbonyl group, and they differ in the orientation of the hydroxyl group. Okay? So next, we'll talk about, in lecture, we'll talk about how we put together these simple monosaccharides to build more complex polysaccharides that have many different functions.